Good morning, fifth grade. We have 2 more days of science left, and we're going to finish off with talking about our responsibility. I know that every chapter we've done, we've always talked about how we have a certain responsibility when it comes to our how we treat the earth and how we treat our ecosystem. So we're going to finish it that way as well. You guys remember this, the first book of the City of Ember, and the issue was that the lights kept going out, right? Now imagine if there was only one light bulb left. We only had one light bulb left. How would you treat that light bulb? Knowing that once that light bulb went out, there were no more light bulbs. Yeah, I mean, you think back to the City of Ember, and there was like all these issues with how are we going to see? People were panicking. And then you fast forward to the third book, and they figured out what those special light bulbs could do and how there was the solar light bulbs that they could use. But do you think that you would start hunting for other light bulbs or maybe other light sources? You probably would, kind of like Lena and Dune did. You guys might take off in search of a solution. But you know, God has given us these resources that we get to use. As you can see, there's one that's shining right in my face right now. But we're going to talk about what is our responsibility and how we should treat the earth. We've talked about drought. We've talked about famine. We've talked about flood. We've talked about fire. Some of those things are man-made. Maybe not necessarily floods unless it was the wartime ones. But some of the things that plague our ecosystem is because of us. So what are some things that we could do to make changes? Just because you guys are in 5th grade doesn't mean that you can't bring about change. Age should not be a deterrent or keep you from trying to do good things. So some people have different views about how we should use our resources. Some people believe that we should use and benefit freely from all of Earth's resources, but this attitude has led to wastes of crazy proportions. This is, you see this person who's on a canoe? He is paddling through what we call the Pacific Trash Heap, and it's basically this spot where all the currents in the ocean kind of come together in this swirling mass, and you have this big heap of trash that all of our plastics and stuff that just gets thrown into the ocean, just piling up there, and it's crazy the amount of trash. We'll get to that in a little bit. So we have people who believe we should just take what we want because it's our earth, and we have other people that believe that preserving an ecosystem is more important than any benefit we might receive from it. So they don't believe that God gave them the earth to use. Now, the Bible teaches us that there should be some sort of balance. Resources should be used, but they shouldn't be wasted. If we look at Genesis 1:28, it talks about how we should honor God by using his resources wisely. So how can we do that? We know that ecosystems undergo all kinds of stresses. We've talked about all of those. We've talked about fire and drought and flood. And some of these are man-made. And we need to have an understanding of our responsibility so that we're careful not to put these stresses on our ecosystems. Probably the largest man-made stress is habitat destruction, right here. We often destroy plant and animal habitats when we're expanding our own. Forests, like our Amazon rainforest, are cut down to provide lumber and farmland. Wetlands are drained to make room for shopping centers, or, think about this in Palm Beach County, housing developments. And we have dams that are built across some rivers in order to provide electricity. But when we do all that, we're causing habitat destruction. I showed you guys some videos, Planet Earth videos. You know I love those videos. And one video series, if you haven't seen it already, please check it out. It's amazing. Is 7 Worlds, One Wonder. Or 7 Wonders, One World, something like that. It's a BBC thing as well. But it talks about habitat destruction in particular. And it shows the map of different countries and different continents for the last like 50 years, like satellite images. And it shows how much of our forests have been completely destroyed because we keep building things. For instance, the country of Ecuador in South America, 90% of its rainforests have been wiped out to put cities and farms and other things like that. 90%. With that comes what? Extinction of animals, extinction of plants that could benefit us, animals that could benefit us, just cool animals that maybe your kids and your grandkids will never get to see, or they'll look at pictures and be like we see the dodo bird. They're like, oh, I remember the monkey or whatever. Habitat destruction is one of the number one stresses on our ecosystem, okay? Construction and development are often good. We have our houses, right? We have places to shop, places to eat, but they can be harmful if they're not done. What are some things that we could do to lessen the harm done on an ecosystem? Well, we're going to go through a couple of these things, and I'll show you examples of what they look like. We could have new trees that can be planted. Areas of land can be set aside as wildlife refuges or national parks, kind of like Grassy Waters, what we went to. Or artificial wetlands or dams that could have fish ladders, which is kind of like steps for fish to travel around the dam. So we're going to look at a couple of them this morning. First one. Remember that train wreck I showed you guys that damaged the Sacramento River system? The one that all those chemicals spilled into the water? Well, in order to reduce the risk of future chemical spills, the railroad company actually built this large, strong fence along the bridge to prevent cars or trains from falling into the river again. Well, with that, we need to make sure that we are doing our part to allow creatures to still be able to travel in their habitat. So here's an example of a fish ladder. If this is the bottom of a dam, the fish actually will jump up into these tiny pools almost like steps, and it allows them to go over the dam wall and to continue on their way. Here would be an artificial wetland. We see a lot of those here in South Florida. When you have like housing developments built, some of those places will actually put in these fake waterways that look natural, but they were actually really man-made. Pollution. This is another major man-made stress. Now, as seen through the Sacramento River incident, living things need clean water, air, and land. That means you and me, as well as plants and animals. Without them, the living things will die. Pollution is anything that makes water, air, or land dirty. And most people think of oil spills and factory chemicals as pollution. You can see all this pollution here. Here's water pollution, here's air pollution, and here's our land pollution. But littering and car exhaust also pollute the environment. Other trash and chemicals can cause pollution as well. If you look at this oil spill right here, that could really mess up an ecosystem. Look at this. This is just the streets after like a New Year's Eve party on the streets. If not disposed of properly, we know that these things can harm plants, animals, and even us, right? There's been a couple of major oil spills that have happened in our oceans where people were drilling, or you had oil ships that ran aground and it destroyed the ecosystem for years. One of the biggest ones happened in Alaska with the Exxon Valdez ship, and it struck land like a sandbar, and millions of gallons of oil spilled out into the oceans right there. And in fact, it went up the river systems and into the soil and the land. That happened back in 89, somewhere in there. And they're still seeing the effects of that now. Now, they've cleaned up a good majority. A lot of animals were hurt and killed. But they're still seeing the effects in like the soil in that area. And some of the waterways never really recovered the way that they should have. But slowly it's getting better. So what I want you to do, we've gone through a couple of them, a couple of things that are our responsibilities. If we have pollution, maybe lessen our pollution. We can build like the fish ladders, or we could put in some sort of wetlands that could, or set aside some areas that are protected areas, kind of like the Grassy Waters that we went to. They cannot build or destroy those. We need to make sure we keep doing those things. what are some things I want you to leave in the comment section? What is something that you could do to lessen the stress of pollution on this earth? Something that you can do. Leave a comment below. Don't copy someone else's comment. I want you to leave something that you can do. I'm actually going to turn the comments off. So if you don't see your comment come up, I still get them. All right, guys? I will see you tomorrow for our last science lesson of the year. Love you guys.